Hey, what's going on, guys? So I've been marketing a painting business for about 14 years now, and in this video I'm going to try to pack everything I've learned and what I know about it into a video. Hopefully you get some value out of this, you learn something that you can apply to your business. The whole reason I'm making this video is I was emailing my subscribers saying, what's a topic you want me to talk about? What could I help you out with in your business? And this was one of the reoccurring topics that came up of a video that I haven't really done in the past. So if you have other ideas, drop them in the comments. If you don't know anything about me, I've been in the painting industry since 2006, been running my own painting company for over a decade. I have spent over 7 figures in just marketing and advertising alone. And I don't say that to brag or boast or anything. I'm just trying to let you know that I do have credibility in this space and I do know what I'm talking about. So these are in no particular order. It's just me telling you what I think you should know about marketing and just trying to help you as much as I can. I know there'll be a lot of people that are starting out and they'll say or ask, hey, what would you do if you were starting out again? How would you do it? I would get a website going ASAP. In today's world, it is like insanely easy to get one. So easy, in fact, if you just email me, the first 15 people that email me, I'll send you a little questionnaire like what's your business name and stuff, and then I'll send you a website for free. I'll host it for a year, but like a domain name is like 10 to 15 bucks a year. That's really all it costs. There's so many templates that you can just copy and put on there. If you want help with that, you can go to my website. We'll have somewhere on there where we'll get you a website and I'll do it as cost effective as I can. But you want to get going on that. If you have 1 foot in, 1 foot out, you're like, oh, I don't know if I should get a website. I'm not sure if I'm going to be doing this for a while. Then you're doing it wrong. And in my opinion, there's a good chance you'll fail. You want to be doing this for the long run. And the one thing you can't stop is time. 3 years is going to pass no matter what you do. But after those 3 years, you're either going to be on this side where you're like, man, I'm really glad that I got started when I did, and I've got these reviews in this website now, or you'll be on the opposite spectrum where you're like, man, I really wish I would have done this 3 years ago. I mean, think about where I'd be right now. Or somewhere in the middle, obviously. But that's what I would do to get started. I'm going to talk more about door-to-door in a little bit. I know it sucks. I know a lot of people don't want to do it. You don't have to do it, but I can tell you it's the cheapest, easiest, most effective way that you can get going with marketing. But I'll also tell you what I know about it and all that stuff, and then other ways that you can market as well. But I just wanted to get that out there for the people that are just starting out and ask that question. So with that being said, another point I want to mention is just because you know something and even know the steps and how to do it doesn't mean that you can do it or that you're gonna do it. The easiest example I could think of is a lot of people say they want a six-pack, but it's like the knowledge of how to do that is out there. It's pretty easy. Just eat right and exercise. You do that long enough, you're gonna have a six-pack. But just because people know that doesn't mean that they actually get the six-pack. The true magic is actually doing the steps, actually doing the exercises, eating the right foods, being in the calorie deficit. Like, hopefully there'll be some new stuff that you never heard of here, but it's the information age. You can get a college education basically for free now online in terms of have the knowledge, but it's how you apply it and what you actually do with it. That's what's going to make the difference. All right, my next point is marketing is a living organism. It is always changing. And the reason I wanted to say this concept is if you're thinking about it like, oh, I'm gonna, figure out marketing, set it and forget it, and then that'll be done. Unfortunately, that's just not how it is. The better way to think about it is, okay, if I'm gonna start marketing, I need to have a system or a process so that marketing is just something we do for infinity. So rather than thinking about like, hey, I'm gonna take this week to learn marketing and then that'll be over, it's more like, hey, I'm gonna designate these hours to marketing every single week. Because it's not stagnant, it's always changing, always evolving, and you have to stay on top of it. And I know that's kind of maybe not what some of you want to hear, and I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer here, but my next point is because it's hard is why it works. Because if it was easy, everyone would be doing it. And by you figuring it out and learning that skill and actually doing it, that is your competitive advantage, and that is why it actually works. So in the beginning, it's like, oh, this sucks. I have to do all this stuff and learn this to get there. But once you're there, you're kind of happy that it is hard because it keeps everybody else from being able to do that. My next point kind of explains this and gives proof to that theory that The best opportunities that I've found over the last 14 years are usually things that are fairly new, and then it works really well and it's great. But then what I found is over time, it starts to not be so great and eventually kind of reverts back to like the average or kind of like the market rate, the going rate of what it cost. You know, they decline slowly over time as everybody kind of starts doing it or figures it out, or it becomes easy for people because somebody else figures it out, starts selling that service or whatever it is. And what I mean by that is that, you know, in my opinion, there's kind of like a going rate for what it costs to market for most of the marketing out there. Now, this is going to be different depending on, you know, where you live, because you might have an average job size that's 2 or 3x the size of mine. You might be in a place where the socioeconomics is just way different. You might have way less competition. There's a bunch of factors, but here in the suburbs of Denver, Colorado, most of the marketing that I've tried ends up costing about 20 to 30%. I'll mention the specific marketings later as we get through this video, but like that just seems to be the going rate. And what I mean by that is if I really needed to go out and get another 100,000 in revenue, I could easily do that if I'm willing to spend 20 to 30,000, which I'm not. And that's the game, that's the hard part. You know, if I'm spending that much on marketing, the way my business is set up right now, I would actually be losing money. I wouldn't be profitable. So my goal is to find marketing that's under 10% of revenue. And a quick exercise to demonstrate what I'm talking about is, say you spend $1,000 for this marketing channel, you get 4 leads, you set up 2 estimates, you book one of them for $5,000, you spend $1,000 to get $5,000. If you take that $1,000 and divide it by 5,000, that's 20%. So that's what I mean by like when I'm saying what marketing costs, I always like to think about it in terms of percentage. And a lot of these marketing things I do, that's usually what it comes in at. It can definitely come in worse than that, but that seems to be, it's kind of remarkable how everything kind of hovers around there, or eventually it'll creep up to there as time goes on. And you know, your business is going to depend on where that's at. You know, do you have a good process and how quickly you call the lead, set up the estimate? Do you have a good sales process? If I had a better process, that would go down. If I had a worse process, that marketing expense or percentage would go up. Which leads me to my next point, which is the only way you're ever going to know that is you have to track your leads. So you basically need to know every lead that comes in, you have to understand where did that lead come from? And then you have to have some kind of way to store that data so that you can see like what is the return on investment for that marketing. You know, you'll hear things like customer acquisition costs. Like you're only going to know that per marketing channel if you're actually tracking these things. At the very least, if you're just starting out, just start getting in the habit of asking, how did you hear about us? And implementing systems so that you know where your leads are coming from. Because if you don't do that, then I don't think you'll ever really be good at marketing. And again, these days it's so easy. I give away a free CRM. So there really is no excuse not to be doing that. And if you're ready to upgrade to a more complex, robust CRM, I also sell one of those. But if you're just starting out, use something, even if it's just a spreadsheet. All right, and then here's a big point that actually took me a long time to learn, like over 10 years. I used to have one of my lead sources be past client. And the way I thought about it was, well, hey, if they're a past client, I can think of that as like I did a good job on production, because obviously if I didn't do a good job, they wouldn't be coming back. So, you know, that's my lead source. Another reason is, you know, when I first started out, for a long time, I think it was like 4 or 5 years, all I did was exterior residential repaints. That's it. I didn't even do interior. And if you think about it, repeat business there, that like if things go right, they shouldn't be calling you for like 8 to 10 years, maybe even longer. So I wasn't thinking about like, oh, multiple years later. But my point is, what I learned is I no longer put past client as my lead source. Now when we get repeat business, we mark that lead estimate job with the actual original lead source. We also tag any repeat jobs as like a repeat customer. So that way when I look at my data and run my reports, I can say, okay, how much business came from this lead source? And then I can also look at, well, how much of that business was a past client, whether it's for as a whole or just for that lead source. And that becomes a lot more helpful, especially as time goes on, because that gives you a better idea of what is your true customer acquisition costs from that channel, from that lead source, as well as, you know, what is your actual like lifetime value of your clients. Like this really clicked for me when started doing more and more commercial, we'll get like, 10 jobs from one client over a year. And also with like Christmas lights, because, it's kind of a subscription business. So we really don't look at it as like, well, this is a past client each year. It's like, well, if I spend this much money to get the job and then the average person is staying 7 years, it's actually a lot more revenue than just if I look at it for just each year kind of deal. So the lesson there is for repeat business, you want to track both the lead source as well as past client. The way I do it in my CRM is the lead source is the original lead source, but then it's tagged with past client so I can see it in my reporting. All right, my next lesson is just because somebody else does it or you see another painting company that's doing that marketing doesn't mean that it works. And there's multiple reasons for this. To hit on what I was just going over, one big reason is that company might not be tracking their leads or where they're getting their revenue from. You'd actually be surprised how many don't. So what happens is, they get their business going, they're starting to make money, they're like, I need to advertise, and they start, paying XYZ to advertise, but they're not actually tracking, like, is it bringing them any business? And if you ask them about it, they're like, well, I don't know. Ever since I've been paying them, we've been growing, so I assume that it's working. And the reason I warn you about that is you might like start to do well, have some cash saved up, and you're like, okay, I'm gonna market. And you're like, well, I can see this company's doing that, so it has to be working, so I'm just gonna do that, and I don't have to track my leads or do anything like that. It doesn't mean that it's gonna work or be profitable for you. I'll talk about other reasons later on, but a lot of times too, a company might be doing this marketing knowing that it's not really generating business, but they're doing it for other reasons. So just don't make that mistake. All right, and then my next lesson is just because you tried it and it didn't work for you at that time, doesn't mean that it doesn't work. There's so many other variables that could come into play there. Just to mention a few is, I'm in a seasonal area where we have snow in the winter, and marketing in October is a lot different than marketing in April. And that could be the difference of whether or not something works or is profitable. Another huge thing is the system and process that you have set up. Anybody can book a referral. They'll let you call them 3 days later after they left you a voicemail, reschedule the estimate twice, all these other things, like they're pretty easy to book. But when you start marketing and you're trying to turn these leads into jobs, if you don't have a good process, you could say, oh, that doesn't work, but it might just be because you didn't call them quick enough, set up the estimate, do a good estimate, all these other things. But the lesson there is just because you tried it and it didn't work for you doesn't mean that it doesn't work. Just personally, I've done stuff, didn't work, come back a year or two later, try it again, and then it does work. So don't be afraid to try things twice if it doesn't work the first time. All right, now the next lesson is that really almost everything you do, you could argue is a form of marketing. And they have these different words, you've heard branding, advertising, marketing, and you could separate out different definitions of those and stuff. But an easy way to make my point is one of the best marketing things you can do is just improve your production. That time or money you spend improving that production, that could be a huge way to get more clients or market. Think about it. If every single client turned into another client, if you did 100 clients this year, you wouldn't have to do any marketing the next year. You would just have 100 more because every single one turned into another client. And what if you could turn every client into 2 clients? Well, then you would just grow exponentially. So that's what I mean by like almost everything you could argue is tied into marketing. And you got to be careful there too, because things can hurt your marketing. If you've got a job site and you've got a painter there and it looks really unprofessional, there's trash everywhere, he's got his shirt off with inappropriate tattoos, playing music with profanity, getting overspray everywhere, and you've got, your lawn sign, wrapped vehicle out there and stuff, that could actually hurt you. People be like, I'm definitely not calling that business to paint my house. If homeowners aren't having a good experience when they go to barbecues and stuff, and people ask them, hey, I'm about to get my house painted, you have any recommendations? They'll be quick to tell them, no, I don't, but I can tell you who not to call. Another way to demonstrate this is good marketing is going to attract clients, but it's also going to attract good people that want to work at your company. When you go to hire somebody, they're going to research your company. If they see a bunch of good reviews, that's going to impact them more than if they see a bunch of bad reviews. And being a service-based business, your product is people. The better your people, the better your product. The better your product, the more referrals you get, the more repeat customers you get, the more reviews you get, or AKA like marketing, which leads to more clients, which leads to better people. And you kind of see how it's all kind of intertwined and works together. But my point with all that is you could look at a lot of different aspects of your business as marketing. All right, so a big bucket of marketing is pay per lead services. So this is going to be your Thumbtack, your Angie's List previously known as Home Advisor, Networks, Painter Choice, all of the ones where you pay an actual fixed amount. They charge you per lead, a lead being a name, phone number, address of someone who's supposed to be, interested in painting. It's not always the case. We'll talk about that in a minute, but that big bucket of pay per lead services is what I'm going to be specifically talking about here. Now, you're going to hear different things. Painter A could be like, those are horrible. Don't ever try them. Don't use them. They don't work. And you'll hear Painter B say, they're great. Those are my livelihood. I've, booked millions off of them. They're wonderful. And both of those things can be true at the same time. So I'll give two real quick examples of how that could be true, and then we'll get into the nuances, and I'll just tell you what I've known and learned from my own experience using these. But a simple one is, maybe it's costing them 20% both. In order to book 1,000, they have to spend $200. But Painter A, that sounds great to them and that's wonderful. Painter B, that's like way too expensive. So you're going to have one saying it's great, one saying it's bad. But think about it. If you're a one-man show and you actually do the painting yourself, you pay 20% for these leads. Materials is 10 to 15%. You're making 65 to 70% on a job. If it's a $6,000 job, you just made $4,000, So in their eyes, it might be great. Another example would be you have two painting companies, right? This painting company has got their systems dialed. Like when a lead comes in, within 10 seconds, they've called, emailed, texted them. They've got an office person there just ready to go after that lead, like literally just waiting there for those leads to come in. Where the other painting company, is busy at the moment, so they don't give them a call till maybe that night, maybe even the next day. And by the time they call them, they're like, oh no, I'm not interested. I'm taken care of, whatever the case is. Those processes can make a huge difference. Like one painting company goes to do the estimate, spends like 10 minutes there, says they'll email them later that night, doesn't email them to the next day, where the other one's doing, a very thorough process, earning trust, booking it right there on the spot. It could just be that, hey, this guy doesn't like it because this painting company is taking all of the jobs and getting them all because their processes are built for it. So let me just kind of get the elephant out of the room. These pay-per-lead services, if you're going to do them, you have to have the right expectations going into it. And the best expectation I could set is expect to be super frustrated, annoyed, and have to deal with a lot of extra stuff that comes along with them. What I mean by that is you're going to get a lot of bogus leads. A bogus lead could be somebody that is trying to scam you. They're saying I need a quote for this place, but really it's this, credit card scam they're trying to do. It could be somebody looking for work. It's just another painter and, it's not a bad idea. I guess I'll just go online, fill out one of these forms. Obviously, there's a painting company at the end of this. It could be your competition just trying to figure out how it works. And a big majority of them, you're going to call and they're going to be like, I've never filled out a form. Or it'll be the wrong kind of lead or all these other things that are going to happen. Like, I feel like if you're not prepared and expecting that, you're going to be really frustrated when you try one of these. But at the same time, there's also real live people that are looking for painting that are on the other end of these leads and you can book them. It's all about expectation, but there is a lot of administrative work that goes along with these pay per lead services. One thing is just getting refunds on those bogus leads. You need a system in place to where when you do get a bad lead, you document it correctly, submit it to the service correctly, ask for a refund, and also have the expectation that you're going to get bogus leads and they're not going to give you a refund for. Just think of it as that is a part of the cost of this service. If you have those expectations, then I think you'll have less frustration with using them. If you don't, that's where a lot of people are going to be like, this is just insane and ridiculous. I'm not going to use these. And I totally get it too. If you're like, hey, I just don't want to deal with something that's like that because that is just kind of a lot. But that has been my experience using them, is we get a ton of that stuff. And it is a lot of administrative work, just documenting all these like bogus scam leads and fake leads and all this stuff. I'm just letting you know that that is a reality. But at the same time, I've booked millions from these pay-per-lead services. But if you're going to use them, you have to have a way to track them. And you need to know, like, what is your return on investment? What is your customer acquisition cost? Like I said, the way I like to think about it is what percentage of your revenue from that marketing channel does this cost? So if you book $10,000 from one of these, how much do you have to pay to get that $10,000 in revenue? And another big thing that's going to affect how this does is where you are. Some places the average job size is 2 to 3 times as high as it is where I live. In some places in a suburb, there's nobody really using one of those pay-per-lead services. And if you're the first and only one, then you're going to have a great experience because when they do get leads, they're going to give them to you only, and you should book them pretty easily. Versus if you're in a place where there's, 5, 10 painting companies signed up, and every lead's going to 4 painting companies that are all super dialed and attacking the lead right away, you can imagine it's going to be a lot harder to get them, all four of those companies are equal, then really you've got a 25% chance of getting it. And these pay-per-lead services are going to also vary what it costs for the lead depending on how much competition there, aka how much demand is there. It's all market, supply and demand. So my point is that there's a lot of variables that are going to affect on your experience and opinion of these pay-per-lead services. Here's been my experience over the last 14 years. They have, at least for my company, gotten more expensive and more bad leads. So for instance, CraftJack, which doesn't exist anymore, when we first learned about that and started using that, it was amazing. We got tons of leads. It was like 5% of our revenue, and it was wonderful. It was great. And then each year it got worse and worse. HomeAdvisor bought them, and then it just really went bad. We were getting like a quarter of the leads we used to get. It got more and more expensive, and then eventually we were getting like no leads from it, and then they just turned it off altogether because these companies have been consolidating. HomeAdvisor bought CraftJack, and then Angie's List and HomeAdvisor merged. And that's kind of been a trend that I've seen. Maybe it's because my processes have gotten worse or where I live or whatever it is, but I have seen from my personal experience that the leads have gotten a lot more expensive over the years, and there has been a lot more bad leads that we have to deal with. Now, whether or not you should use it depends on you and what your goals are. For me personally, because we want our marketing to be under 10% and it's really hard to get these under 10%, I only use them when I'm trying to grow. So an example where a company might, use this temporarily is, let's say you hire an estimator, and for that estimator to be happy, enjoy his job, provide for his family, whatever it is, you need to get him 12 estimates a week. But right now, organically and with your marketing that, is cost effective, you're only able to generate 8 leads per week. You can use these services to supplement and get those other 4 estimates a week to have good retention, to keep that guy around, to give you time to get your other marketing up to where you can get those 12 leads a week, and then you can turn that off. And that is probably the best advantage to these pay-per-lead services is you can turn them off and on with the click of a button. Obviously, you can't do that with like referrals or something. So that is one of the nice things about these. Just be prepared to have to do some administrative work on top of it. And for the best outcome, I would suggest a lot of these you can actually pause and unpause. I would have them pause most of the time and then unpause them when you are available to call the lead as soon as it comes in. So if you actually have someone working for you, like an office person, and say they work 8 to 5, I would just put that on their daily list of activities, after they come in at 8, turn on the pay-per-lead services, and before they leave for the day, turn it off. Because getting to that lead immediately is going to make a big impact on how well this works for you. I would also just make sure that your processes are dialed in, and then also that you have a system for the bad leads. As soon as you realize that it is a scam or that they need a different service like roofing and you're a painting contractor, that you can, submit the request for the refund, because getting those refunds can be the difference of whether or not it's profitable and works for you. But if you don't have time to do that and you get too busy and those fall through the cracks and you don't realize that till 2 weeks later because you didn't call them, I think you understand the point. That's going to make a big impact on how well this will do for you or not. And then the last thing I'll touch on is you can think of these as an investment as well. So a lot of these will have their individual platform where they have their own, reviews. So like if you're day one and you have 0 reviews and then this other company has like 300 reviews on that platform and you guys both get the lead, you're going to be the severe underdog. But as time goes on, if you get the reviews, invest in this, learn the system, it should become more profitable over time. So if you have like one that you like and you don't have to use all of them, like say you're trying to just get those 4 estimates a week, whatever it is, I would pick one and I would invest heavily on one, because you're going to have a better outcome than if you're doing all of them and trying to get a review here and a review there. Like if you put all your focus on one, I think you'll be better off. All right, so now let's talk about paid ads, which again is a really big bucket. But this is going to be like Google AdWords, Facebook ads, Yelp, and a bunch of others. And the idea is it's where you're actually paying for impressions, clicks, and leads. And really it's about impressions. So the difference when you're thinking of a pay per lead service versus like paid ads is you're not guaranteed any leads. But like pay per lead service is like, hey, if I get you a name, phone number, address, you give me $100. Versus with paid ads, it's like you give $100 and this many people are gonna have the impression, or it's gonna come across their screen, or they're gonna see it. But that doesn't mean anything. You could get 0 leads really easily. But that's what paid ads is going to be. All right. And then this is where, the marketing is changing so often and so much that it's definitely not stagnant. So if you're going to do paid ads, like, you have to have a way to track this stuff, and you really have to stay on top of it. You can pay another company, like a agency, to do that for you, but you really need to understand and know the intricacies with that. And there's just so many variables that are going to affect it, right? So a big thing is, what is the actual ad? What is the copy? Some, like Google AdWords, you really just got text, but that is, they call it intent-based search, where somebody actually is on the computer, they're looking for painting my house, versus like a Facebook ad, they're scrolling and they're just, killing time on the couch. Their intent isn't, oh, I need painting, but then they see an ad and they're like, oh yeah, I guess I could get some painting, or I did need some painting. So there's different categories of these paid ads. And then some, like Facebook, you can have a video, you could have a picture, you could have words, versus others like, Google, it's just text and there's only so much that you can do. But whatever the ad is going to make a big impact. And then there's also a funnel, a way that they like come in. For instance, on Facebook, you could have an ad where you press it, it goes to a form, the form is pre-filled out, you press one more button and that's it. The lead is sent to you. And that would be what's called like low friction. Versus you could have a lot of like friction to where they see the ad, they click, it takes them to a landing page where they have to like enter their name, press click again, and then it goes, okay, now what's your address? Click again, okay, now what's this? Click again. So there's like a lot of friction, a lot of steps. And what I have found, and I think you would find as well, is the more friction you have, you get less leads, but the leads you get convert better. So you get a higher conversion rate, meaning if you get 10 leads, maybe 7 turn into an estimate. Versus when there's very little friction, you get a lot of leads and the cost per lead is lower, but the conversion rate is worse. So you get another 10 leads, but then you only convert 3 of them. So with these, my favorite metric to look at is cost per estimate. And one reason why I really like that metric is the best metric is obviously the percentage of what you spent to revenue, but when you look at that, there's can be quite a bit of lag there, meaning that you get the lead this week, you might not get the revenue for a month. So you might not know how good this thing is working for 1, 2, 3 months, which is a long time in the world of marketing and advertising. So if you look at the cost per estimate, you can get a better idea before even the estimates are done. It's like, cool, we set 15 estimates and maybe they're booked for next week, but at least you know pretty quickly what the cost per estimate is. And that cost per estimate, there's so many variables that can affect it. A big one is where you live. So think about it with like a Google AdWord. If there's no other painter in your area that's paying for Google AdWords, well, then your cost per click is going to be super low, because these platforms are based on supply and demand. On the flip side of that, if you live in an area where there's 10 super competitive painters and they're all paying for Google AdWords, that's going to drive the price up. It's literally like a buy and sell bidding auction thing, right? So it's like, I'm willing to pay $1, I'm willing to pay $1.50. Now I'm willing to pay $2, $2.50, and it works its way up. Versus if you're the only one there, then you can get it for like, 1 penny. And the platform, like in this case, Google, has no problem going that low because, it's either sell it to you or sell it to nobody. So where you live does make a big difference. In today's world, it has become super competitive, and those pay-per-lead services I was talking about right before this, they're one of the biggest bidders, right? So when you type in how much to paint my house in blah, blah, blah area, they're bidding on those. So you're always going to have some kind of competition, and because those guys pretty much do that one thing, that's like one of the big key things of their business, and they've got people working on it 24/7 and algorithms and stuff, like they're gonna pretty much bring that price up to where, like Google AdWords, I've found it pretty difficult to be profitable on that. Again, it's like those pay-per-lead services. The only time we do it is if we're trying to grow or supplement more estimates. I've paid a lot of different companies, businesses, some good, some bad, but it's been pretty expensive. And again, I'm trying to be under 10%. Like really, I want to be at like 5%. And with Google AdWords, it's usually higher than that, which is why I don't really use it. And I'm not perfect. My systems could be better, but I'm just saying my personal experience hasn't been good. Now, back to what I was saying, like this stuff is not easy. It's hard. Once you figure it out, that's your competitive advantage. With some of the other ones, I have been successful, but I do want to note, like I have failed at these so many times for so many years. So going back to my point, like just because it didn't work for you doesn't mean it doesn't work. Finally, I figured out some and was able to make them work. But it was a lot of trial and error, a lot of testing, a lot of different processes. But now that we've got it figured out, it's like, great, now we can really grow and get business. And I just hope that they don't change it, because like I said, this is just always changing. I've had stuff that worked this year, the next year it doesn't work because the platform changes, because this, that, and the other changes. I mean, it's really an evolving thing. One thing I think is going to happen is, like these pay-per-lead services, I know people get frustrated with them and stuff. I think it's really hard for them. I don't think they make much money, and I think they're going to end up going out of business. I mean, that's just my opinion, because their whole business model is Google, and Google can just take it out from underneath them. Now they're doing that Google guarantee, which is basically like one of those pay-per-lead services. So they don't have to show them the top, plumber, electrician anymore. They can just show theirs. So my little tangent point there is like, this is constantly changing, and you need a system, you need some kind of CRM or agency or somebody to really follow this, track this, that lives and breathes this, and that works on this constantly to make it work. At least that's been my experience. And again, it's all about what your goals are. If you're fine with paying 20 to 30% for marketing, then yeah, all this stuff is going to work, and pick your choice. That's just been my experience. It's pretty easy to get at that, but when you're trying to get it at a good cost is where it gets difficult. I can make a whole video on, each one of these, like Yelp and Angie's List, Facebook, Instagram. But again, I'm just trying to put them all in a bucket there. And long story short is they do work. You have to actually put in the time to figure out how to make them work, or you're gonna have to pay somebody else who figured that out, and just make sure that you're getting it at a good price. And you're gonna have to pay that premium for them, right? So if you pay an ad agency to run ads for you, you got to pay them their fee, which is well worth it if they can actually get it at a good price. But again, I've been told so many times that, oh, we're going to do this, that, and the other, and then they just don't deliver. All right, so now let's talk about direct mail. And again, I'm going to put this in a bucket. It's a little bit of a smaller bucket, but there's a lot of different kinds of direct mail that you can do. So example would be they have coupon booklets. I think it depends on where you are, but here, like there's a Valpak one, there's a Money Mailer one, there's these home services, like there's magazines, and it's basically where you're in some kind of, whether it's like a coupon booklet or like an actual magazine or pamphlet or something, and there's multiple companies in there, including you. And the idea with that is like it's actually cheaper because the company that's going to send them out, say they have, 50 businesses in there, and they're paying, the price to send one thing, but then they can charge 50 people. That's how they're able to basically say, hey, you would normally, if you just sent your own, it'd cost this much. You can use me and send it for this much. And then they'll have their sales pitch of how like these are good. And, people actually look at these where they throw the other ones away and this and that. And then you can do your own direct mail, right? So, you can literally just print out a letter, fold it up, and mail it. But you can also do EDDM through the post office. You can do your own direct mailer where they have got different sizes and there's different prices for each size, and they break it up based on the routes that the actual mail people go, and you can pick which routes you want, and you can design your own thing, and they have like different pricing, and that is actually cheaper than buying the individual stamps and mailing them. And this works. This is one of the oldest marketing things out there, and it obviously works because you open your mailbox every day and there's tons of junk mail in there. And I do think, the demographic is good for painting because you're going to actual homes, you're able to target them, where it's going. In my opinion, I think a lot of the older population, that is our clients, actually like enjoy getting the mail, looking at it, seeing what's going on in their community and who's marketing and stuff like that. But so from my experience, the average what I see is about 0.1% or 1 in 1,000 convert, and that would be good. And then on the bad side would be 0.01% or 1 out of 10,000. Now I've actually seen it a lot better than that, and I've experienced that, and I have multiple businesses, and it depends on a lot of things, right? Depends on what neighborhood you're going to. For instance, I have a roofing company. I live in Colorado where it hails. If we were to send mailers literally like the next day to a neighborhood that just got hit with hail, we're gonna have a lot better rate than if we were to send a month later. I have a Christmas light business, and if you send it at the right time in the right neighborhood, I've had better results than that. And honestly, here's a gem. The best open rates I've ever had is when I actually send them a letter, meaning that we actually buy the postage stamp, we actually fold it up like this, we actually try to make it look like we wrote the letter. So when they get a letter, they're like, oh, somebody actually mailed me a letter. I don't even put the business name on it. We just say, you know, from my estimator, from me, like, hey, like, and I'm like, hey, I live in your community. I do this business. I just wanted to introduce myself, make sure you knew who I was. And if you ever are considering or need my services, please give me a call. I won't let you down. That has been the best direct mail conversion rates I've had. That's the most expensive because you're literally, it's the cost of the postage stamp plus the materials, right? Like the piece of paper, the envelope. But again, direct mail, it's really hard to be under 10%. Conditions have to be there, you know, being in a seasonal area. Just when I send the direct mail will also affect on how well that campaign does or does not. And then there's also things to consider with it. It is branding, which I talk about in another section. And then, you know, you could get a call 2 years later from a direct mail that you sent, you know, last year. People will keep that. They don't need their house painted every year, but sometimes if they like it, they'll keep it. And with all of these things, including direct mail, like the actual copy and picture, whatever you have on there, does make a big impact. All right, so now let's talk about home shows. They definitely work. People are going there to get home improvement. Again, it's going to depend on a lot of things, the time of year, where it's located, how many other people in the home show are doing painting, where your booth is located within the home show, who you actually have there at the booth is probably going to make one of the biggest differences. Again, I could make a whole video on it, but you know, just quick tips is I would recommend standing, not sitting down. Be engaged, don't be on your phone looking at stuff. Smile, look inviting, look like, hey, even if I don't need painting, I want to just go talk to this person because of their energy and stuff. I know that's a hard thing to teach, but you want high energy, friendly, inviting. You can use props to engage them. You know, you can give out candy, balloons, bags, all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, we don't really do home shows much anymore because they're a hassle in terms of like, they're usually on the weekends. You have to find somebody to staff it and you need to make sure it is staffed. Like what if the person is sick that weekend and you got to like go there, set up, take down. Usually, about 20%. Again, we're like, you know, had good ones where we're closer to 10%, but it's just a lot of work to do them. So again, if we are trying to grow, we'll do them. But if we're not trying to grow, then it's another category where we only do it when we need to. Radio. I've never had good success with radio. I don't know anybody that's had good success with radio. I've just had bad experiences. I'm not saying it doesn't work, just it hasn't worked for me yet. I did hear one painting company said that it was good, but it was for recruiting painters. So they did it more just for recruiting painters, just for getting good painters. They had better success with the ads for that than they did with actually getting clients. But I'm sure there's plenty of companies that use radio and it does well. Just my experience, it's never been good for me. It was just one of the worst ones I did in terms of how much I paid and what I got. I think got nothing. Again, really bad, and I've talked to multiple other painters that have tried it and it didn't do well for them. So I would avoid that, especially if you're starting out. But as you get bigger and you're going to do some branding or stuff, yeah, you can definitely give it a shot. All right, so partnerships, networking, cold calling, this stuff works, but it's a long game. You got to really be like in it. But there's networking groups you can go to, right? So they'll like meet up at a coffee shop every, you know, second Tuesday of the month or whatever it is. And, you know, there'll be different people. Like there's a real estate agent, a loan agent, a plumber, an electrician, a car mechanic, a painter, blah, 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 blah. And it's a community where you guys, you know, exchange ideas on how to be better business people. And then, you know, when the mechanic talks to somebody and they're like, yeah, I'm going to paint my house. Oh, I know a painter, this and that. And then even within the group, they'll exchange services and stuff. It works. It's hard to scale that way, you know, because you only have so much time. And even if you're in 100 of those and you're going around, like, I don't think you're going to scale that well. But maybe if you have a bunch of estimators, a bunch of people working for you, they're all bought in and doing it. My point is that it works. It's a good thing to start out with, but I don't think it's going to get you to like really big numbers if you're really trying to grow. Partnerships are great and they do work and you should pursue them. It's all about putting a system and plan in place to actually do it. But a partnership would just be like, you know, property management companies or a relationship where like, hey, you know, when they need painting, they call you. And the key there is to just establish the relationship and then keep the relationship. Problems are going to happen, but it's how you handle those problems that make people decide whether they're going to call you again or not call you. So if you have a good relationship, go above and beyond. If there is a problem, you know, do whatever it takes to make the problem right and keep that relationship. Again, that's a whole nother video. but it does work. And then there is cold calling, and that does work as well, especially, I think it's legal to do business to customer cold calling depending on where you live and stuff, and maybe I'm wrong there, but business to business, you can definitely do that. And you can just cold call property management companies and introduce yourself, let them know what you're doing, see if you're a good fit, let them know you'd like to get a relationship going. Stuff works. These things though take manpower, so actually like a person has to go out and do it. It's more like, instead of paying money for the leads, you pay for labor and the labor goes and gets the leads, or you do the labor yourself. Right? Email campaigns, those definitely work. You should definitely do them. That again is like a whole nother video, and there's a lot there, but the most simplest basic thing is, again, you need a CRM, you need to keep all of your clients' information, and then you don't want to abuse it, because if you're sending an email every day, people are going to want to unsubscribe. They're going to say, hey, stop emailing me. They're not going to open them or read them. But if, once a quarter, or like, hey, you've got all these clients, things slow down in the winter, you could send them a coupon saying, hey, I really don't want to lay off my guys this winter, so I'm offering this really good coupon. If anybody needs any interior painting done this winter, please give us a call. Stuff like that, it works good. Again, I've got some different businesses, so it's like we'll email our clients letting them know, hey, we do Christmas lights, and then especially if there's a hailstorm, we're going to email all our clients in that area saying, hey, we got your back, we can help you out with that hailstorm and getting a new roof. All right, so I want to explain what I call branding, and I don't even know if that's the word, right? It's whatever you want to call it. There's branding, advertising, marketing. In my head though, the way I separate it is like, hey, there's marketing, advertising, but then there's this thing called branding that I have an idea of in my head. And for me, branding is something that you are not going to be able to actually track and get an ROI on, or you might not even be expecting or wanting an ROI. Really what I'm trying to do with branding is make people aware I exist and make them associate the business with like good. So there's some kind of marketing techniques that I would say is more like a branding play than an actual marketing play. When I think of marketing, it's like I'm trying to get a name and a phone number that I can call, set up an estimate with, and turn into a job. Where branding, it might be like I'm trying to make it so that when I'm at the estimate that I got from marketing, they're like, you know what, I've definitely heard of your company. Signs, I would say, is really good branding, right? All kinds of signs, whether it's a billboard, where I live, they've got buses and you can have signs at the buses, or like benches, you can have signs. Obviously your lawn signs when you're actually doing work. If you've got company vehicles and the wraps and there's signs on them. If you've got employees and you have shirts, they're wearing your shirt, they're shopping at the grocery store, people see that. Really, you can argue everything is branding, but like with direct mail, you might not get that many that convert, but like they see that, they're opening their mail. Oh, ABC painting, boom. Oh, ABC painting, boom. Oh, ABC painting. And it's starting to like, they just know about it. And if you get really good at branding, it can be really successful. And I think that this would work in like a smaller town, For instance, the closest city to me is Denver. And I think it'd be really hard to brand in Denver. But there's a lot of like little towns in the suburbs around there. And I almost think like if it's a small town, it's pretty easy to brand in there. Like if you on the main street of that town got a big sign and you do a lot of events in that town and you send a lot of mail in that town, like you could really become front of mind. Like there's a painting company that did a really good job of that here where I live. They're called M&E. But I just remember when I was like in college and stuff, it was like, man, if you live in Fort Collins, you know who M&E Painting was. I think one of the biggest things they had was on one of the main busy streets, they had a guy with a sign and he would dance, and he was a really good dancer and would do like pretty incredible dancing, and just like everybody knew about it. I think like they're on the news a bunch because of it, and they did really good with signs everywhere. They were in the news, they were in publications. Like maybe it was because I was in the painting industry, but I just like remember having that thought, like if you live here, you know who M&E Painting is. So shout out to them. They did a great job with that. But my point is, I think that would be pretty hard to do in like a really big area. And maybe I'm wrong, not that it can't be done, but I want to make 2 points about branding. Point one is there's a lot of times where you're not going to actually get a good return on investment in terms of like when I'm saying that 10%, maybe it's 0%. Because like a lot of people don't say when you call, like when you ask, how did you hear about us? They don't say, oh, I saw your company vehicle, so I decided to call you. But they have seen your company vehicle and they do know that you exist, and they have seen a bunch of your other branding. So it kind of compounds. The other thing I would say about branding is I think in the beginning, you shouldn't be doing anything that's like branding. You should just be trying to generate business, get referrals, get cash flow. But then as you get bigger and you start allocating a budget towards marketing, that's when it makes sense to brand. Because like, for instance, if you're just going to grow organically because you're doing great work, you're getting referrals, whatever, and let's say, you do $1 million in business and 10% is going towards marketing. That's $100,000. Let's say the next year you do 1.5 million in business and you didn't change anything. It just organically grew because of referrals, word of mouth, other things started getting going like your SEO and website and all that stuff. Well, now if you're trying to spend 10%, you've got $150,000 to spend. Now you can pocket that other 50 as profit if like all you need to spend is that 100, or maybe it's even less than that. But that's when it would make sense to like do some branding, like spend that money on branding. And that's kind of going back to one of the original points I said, just because somebody else is doing it doesn't mean that it works, right? So somebody might be buying that billboard or doing whatever it is, and they aren't getting any kind of return on it. They're doing it for different reasons to really like brand, because they don't really know what else to spend the money on, and they're trying to spend 10% or whatever it is. So that's where you got to be careful, especially when you're starting out, just like making that assumption like, well, this big awesome painting company I know of is doing it, so it must work. Doesn't mean it's going to work for you, especially when you're new. You're trying to figure out what is going to be the best return on investment for marketing I can do as I work my way up, and hopefully can get there someday. Okay, and then another thing with branding, like I said, for me, branding is like two things. It's like one, making people aware, but then maybe even more importantly, making them associate your company with positive things. Okay, so it's kind of like your reputation, and this can make or break you. If you get a negative or a bad reputation, it's gonna do the same thing, but in the opposite effect. It can make your company go to zero, right? If most of the people that interact and deal with your company have a negative experience, that's going to actually, I would argue, travel faster than a positive experience. People are more likely to tell others how they had a bad experience than if they had, a neutral or good experience. So your reputation, your brand is everything, especially if you're going to be playing the long game. So if you're trying to grow, but you've got, leaky pipes and kind of like some growing pains and things aren't good, it's not a bad idea to pump the brakes and get everything really healthy and have healthy growth. Because if you grow too fast, things start breaking down, people start having bad experiences, it could actually be pretty detrimental to your business. And I would say do your best, put in systems to get reviews. Especially if you're first starting, like I mentioned before, 3 years is going to go by. If you have a system to get reviews over those 3 years, you could easily have over 100 reviews on multiple different platforms, which is going to be huge for you. Versus if you just don't take the day or week to put some kind of system in that generates reviews, you're not going to get reviews, because it's hard to get reviews. Like a lot of people will say they're going to write you a review and they don't, not because they didn't mean to, they're just busy and they forget. So you need some kind of system to really try to make sure that they actually give you the review, because converting 10% more clients into reviews can make a huge impact. And then on the flip side of that, bad reviews, unfortunately in the painting world, I think they're really bad for your business. What I mean by that is there's some businesses where they all have bad reviews. Restaurants, they're all gonna have bad reviews. But you can look up, there's probably multiple painting companies in your area that don't have a single bad review. Yeah, maybe they only got 5 reviews, but they don't have any bad ones. So just one bad review looks pretty bad. So the last thing I'll say about reviews is just don't underestimate your reputation and your brand. And just make sure you have a system in place that limits the amount of bad reviews you could potentially get and maximizes the amount of positive reviews you could get. I would look at that as a marketing cost and expense. And I'm just telling you from experience, that's very, very valuable. And I think a lot of people underestimate how valuable that is. Your reputation, your brand is everything, especially in a home service trade business. All right, I want to tell you some experience about these sales guys that are going to constantly blow up your phone. You'll have all kinds, but specifically for this video, the guys that are going to try to sell you some kind of marketing service. In my experience, I don't think they're bad people or anything, and I don't think it's even intentional. But most of the salespeople I've dealt with have given me inaccurate information. And a lot of times, like I said, I don't even think it's their fault. It's compartmentalized, there's sales and there's production, and the sales team is just getting fed this stuff that may or may not be true. For example, a sales guy will call you and say, hey, yeah, A, B, and C painting, they got 100 leads last month because they're advertising with us, advertise with us. It's like, wow, 100 leads, that's incredible. I mean, this is a no-brainer, I'll make so much money. But what they don't know or tell you or whatever it is, 30 of those were actually people trying to scam them. but we count it as a lead because, you know, on the computer system, it shows up as a lead. Somebody filled out this form. Another like 15 were duplicates because of something there. Another 10 were actually not even looking for painting. Another 5 were, outside the service area. And actually the way we count leads isn't necessarily a name and phone number and stuff. It's just if they click on your profile. So my point is, it's been extremely rare where they're accurate. They usually way overpromise and underdeliver. That's just been my experience. Some of them have actually delivered, but it's less common than you'd think. So when talking with them, I would just, take it with a grain of salt. Another thing that's a huge red flag is when they have a minimum. What I mean by minimum is they say, well, you have to buy this for 6 months or 12 months, and you have to sign this contract that you're going to give us this much money over that time. That is like, I think maybe once or twice it's worked out when I've done something like that, and I could probably name at least 20 where it didn't. It's almost always a red flag, and the reason they do that is because it doesn't work. And they will have every excuse in the book, and they'll overcome the objection, and they'll explain to you why, and like, well, because, if you just do it for 1 month, it's not going to work. You really see the results like month 8 or 9 because of branding and, because of this, that, and the other. And, well, we, have to make sure we fill our spots, and we have a limited amount of spots, so that's why we do this. Like, they're going to have reasons as to why, but if it was good, they wouldn't do it. That's my opinion. I will say it's worked a couple times, but even those couple times that it did work, I won't say who because I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but I advertised with the company and I was paying a certain budget and it worked, and I was like, wow, this is great. So I increased my budget, but every time I increased my budget, they wanted to sign another 12-month agreement. So I'm like, okay, even though I'd already been with them. And I did it again and again, and then it went horrible. It all of a sudden turned into just terrible, and then I'm stuck in this 12-month agreement. And it's just annoying for me because it's like, I would never do that to a client. All right, so you can break marketing when you're actually getting leads into 2 different categories. One would be where they come to you, and then the other would be where you go to them. So an example, if you have a website, somebody searches for painting, they come to you, enter their information on their website. One where you go to them would be door-to-door. Now, door-to-door I know isn't fun, I'll admit it. It's not the funnest thing in the world. It can feel uncomfortable. It can be a grind, especially if you're like running marketing teams and stuff, but I can tell you it works. And that is a big reason why I've been successful. This was actually the first year that we didn't run door-to-door teams for a long period of time. We did do a little bit of door-to-door marketing, but it's the first year where we didn't book over $100,000 from door-to-door marketing since 2010. So it works. At the beginning, over 75% of my business was door-to-door. And that's how I was able to really get a lot of equity, a big business. When I say equity, what I mean is like happy customers, referrals, to where if I did no marketing the next year, I'm still going to have a customer base. But in the beginning, you don't have any customers, so you're just waiting for things to work, and door-to-door will 100% work. You don't have to do it, but what I mean by work is it's really easy to have it under 10%. The first year, I went door-to-door myself. I painted the houses myself. I did the estimates myself. It was me and a business partner at the time, but we didn't have anybody, and we went door-to-door, and it was great. We made great money. It worked. The next year, we hired sales reps that ran their own marketing teams and did the estimates, but we had no marketing, other than door-to-door. So I'll give you some quick tips with the door-to-door. Again, I can make an entire video on this. Depends on where you live, right? If you happen to live in a place where they do have newer construction, you want to go to Zillow, you want to type in the ages of the homes built, but you want to figure out neighborhoods that are 7 to 12 years old. That's where we've done the best. You can market in neighborhoods that are 20, 30 years old, but I would start there. If you want to really maximize your return on investment, start there. It's very counterintuitive. At first, I'm going to go to the neighborhoods that look like they need painting. Those were the worst neighborhoods. There's a reason they look like they need painting because they don't really paint that often. You want to go to the neighborhoods where they maintain their home, where they change the oil in the car, where they paint before it even really looks like it needs paint, when there's just a little bit of fading, a little bit of peeling. That 7 to 12 years old is the sweet spot. I would just start there. There might only be 5 of those, but start there and then start going through your older neighborhoods. It's all about efficiency. So there's so much prep you can do before you go door to door. An example would be we'll print out maps of every single neighborhood, and then we'll draw with colored pencils the actual route that us, if we're doing the marketing, or our marketers are actually going to walk. And the reason for that is you can get lost in a neighborhood really easy. You can go through the whole neighborhood and have to spend 10 minutes walking back to your car. So we tried to break it up into 2-man teams, and we'd park the car here, have 2 routes that go out, hit every single house in the most efficient way, and then come back and end at the car. So you're in, out as quickly as possible. It's all about the number of doors you actually knock per hour, which if you're organized and prepared, you can get a lot. If you're in a good place during a good time of day, good time of season and stuff, you should be getting at least 1 lead an hour. If you go for 2 hours and you don't get a lead, something is wrong. It's either your pitch, the actual place that you're marketing, or it could just be bad luck, but it's usually one of those 2 things. So if that happens, I would switch up the neighborhood, switch up your pitch. My pitch was just, I would have a lot of energy. I'd be like, hi, my name's Shane. I'm going around your neighborhood. We're painting tons of homes in here, and I would love to give you a free estimate. And then I would just put my pen to paper, like I'm ready to take their name, phone number, and then I have their address because I'm walking by it. That's all I would get. That pitch right there, I've booked millions off of it. Super simple, easy. It's all about energy, being excited. You're gonna have flyers. If they don't answer the door, that's when you leave a flyer. Or if they tell you no, you say, hey, would you like a flyer for when you are ready for paint or something like that? But you don't want to have the flyer out when they actually open the door, because their default is gonna be like, no, give me a flyer. So I actually would put it in my back pocket so they couldn't see it. All I'd have is my clipboard, pen and paper. I'd give them the pitch. And then if they're like, well, this, that, and the other, I'd be like, oh, okay, here, take a flyer, blah, blah, blah. Definitely check with your local laws. Some places you have to get like a little badge or something, or do a background check. Some neighborhoods don't have no soliciting. I've had the cops called on us plenty of times. You want to look professional and good. You know, some of these people are like, who's this guy walking around my neighborhood? If you look like you're, you know, a thief or something, they're definitely going to call the cops. So you want to like make sure they know, like, no, I'm a marketer going around doing this. But that'll definitely kill morale if the cops show up on you, especially if you are not supposed to be there. I've never gotten a ticket on the first call. We did get a ticket one time, but it was literally because we were marketing. Cop came by, said you can't do this here. The very next day, same cop, same person, so got a ticket. That was for roofing, but just pay attention to that. Another thing is, marketing could just be around your job site, right? So you're painting a house here, go by, have flyers, and hit all the houses around it and let them know, like, hey, Bob and Susan down the street, I'm painting their house right now, and I just wanted to go by, introduce myself, and see if any of their neighbors need to paint. I would love to give you a free estimate. That works really, really well. All right, so website and SEO. I'm gonna separate those into 2. First, let's start with website. Should you have a website? Absolutely yes, 100%. In today's day and age, it is so simple and easy to have a website and so cost effective. There is no reason to not have a website. If you don't know where to start or want a website, just go to my website and we'll get you one. My goal is to make it the most cost-effective way possible to get a website. I'm just trying to remove any barriers painters have of like wanting to be successful. The information's there. If you want it, you can achieve it. That's why I give away a free CRM. That's why you're able to get a website so cheap and easy. But just having a website doesn't do too much. But I definitely think it's necessary because that is like your storefront. Like, if a client is deciding between 2 painters and one has a website and one doesn't, I think they're gonna go with the guy with the website. It builds a little bit of security for them. Like, one, they know they could like write a review if something did go wrong. Plus, it's just like, what are you gonna put on your business card, your lawn sign, this and that? Like, you absolutely need a website. Now, the other side of this is, you know, this SEO thing, which is search engine optimization. And again, this is an ever-changing, always changing landscape. And it's a big topic, and it is absolutely important, and it does pay off, and you can have incredible marketing results from it. There's 2 things with it though. One is, it's an investment. This isn't gonna happen overnight. It's gonna take some time for this to pay off, and you're gonna be investing and working on this. But like I said before, 3 years is gonna pass. So I would say start doing it now, and I think you'll be very happy that you did. There's a lot of factors that come into play, like competition, where you are, who you hire to do it, or if you do it yourself. And there's a lot of things that overcomplicate it, but I'll say there's 2 main things with it. One is, it's not that complicated when you think about it. These search engines, all they want to do is give somebody a good answer, right? If you search painters near me or whatever, they just want to give them painters that offer that service in their area and that are not horrible painters, that are decent painters, right? That have the information they're looking for. And if you do hire somebody, it's going to be a collective team effort to do SEO, because like the person who you hire or whatever, there's only so much they can do. A big part of it is getting reviews. a big part of it is, content, right? Like, can you generate content? Can you take pictures of your work? Can you update the website, more than just once a year? I could make a whole video on it. It's a big, long rabbit hole. But one, absolutely get a website. And then two, I would start putting some kind of SEO effort into it. If you don't have any money now, that's fine. Put your own, just time, a little bit here and there. Make it so once a month, you're going to work on it just a little bit. And then maybe one day when you have the expendable cash, you can hire somebody to do it. And again, it's hire somebody who you trust, who has a good reputation, or if you can find it too, there's people that will say, hey, you don't have to pay until I get you results. But if it's done right, if you can front page, you will get leads. They are really good leads. They have one of the highest lead conversion, one of the best booking rates out of all the lead sources we get. You should be able to spend less than 5% on marketing if you're able to, front page. But it might be an investment. It might take 6 months or a year before you see any traction. And again, it is just kind of area as well. If you have a ton of competition, it's going to be a lot different than if there's only 2 or 3 people. But you do want it so that if a client is considering using you, they're probably going to go sit down on their computer or on their phone and type in your name, your company name in the computer and press enter, and you want something to come up. So definitely get a website, get a Facebook page for your business, do all this and that. You could spend a day and have all that done. And it's super cost effective. A lot of those, social media profiles are all free. Your website, like I said, it's I think 10 to 15 bucks for a URL. And then depending on where you host it and how you have it built, it's really not that expensive. And I definitely think it's worth the small cost to just have a website. All right, so that's a lot. I hope you guys learned something. It would mean a lot to me if you comment, or subscribe if you got any value. If I missed something, drop it in the comments. If you have any questions, if you want me to talk about a different marketing topic, like I said, I can make a whole video on a lot of these things. If you want that, just drop it in the comments and let me know which one you're most interested on. I really appreciate you taking the time to watch this, and I'll see you in the next one.